Welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today's painting, or today's experiment, is going to be utilizing gouache paints for landscape painting. I'm not going to do a full size. This is the back of a 11 by 15 quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua. I'm kind of probably just going to do little squares, just experiment, just lay paint down. I have out white, the yellow ochre from earlier. I have a different brand, so this is the Royal Talons brand. I got these off of blick.com. These are my first gouaches that I had purchased, but whenever I first tried gouache, I kind of just hit a wall and got discouraged. But I'm trying to get back into it and utilize it for figure painting and portrait painting, and I also do want to try it for landscape painting. I have black, ultramarine, and burnt sienna. So that's what I'm going to experiment with. I'm going to push those back off. And what I thought about was, with watercolor, I do landscape, building paintings, things like that. And then I do oil paintings where I do the toneless landscapes. And I do try to experiment and achieve the a toneless look with watercolor and go back and forth. But I know each medium is different. With the landscape sketches with pen and ink, it's a different medium. So I think with this approach, I need to look at it differently and not approach it as if I'm using a hake and the rigger brush. So I grabbed a whole bunch of brushes because, of course, even though we say a million times we don't need a million different paints, we don't need a million different brushes, we accumulate those. I did a lot of Chinese flower painting prior to my watercolor landscape painting, so I have a lot of Chinese brushes, and I think that's what I'm going to wind up utilizing. Though I do have some other, so these would be Western style brushes, I guess, and I might try those out. I might not, and kind of develop the gouache in and of itself as it's just a different medium for me to utilize. So remember, this is for fun and just learning and whatnot. I don't remember exactly everything with these brushes, but I think this one was a combination brush where the darker on the inside is stiffer and the white on the outside is looser. I think they might call it, I'll show you a very extreme version of it, a cloud brush, which is for big, loose laying down of water or color. This guy is for more pointed and calligraphy type motions, and this is kind of a mixture of the two hairs. So anyway, let's just delve into it and have fun. Let's grab some yellow ochre, which right off the bat is weird for me because, as you know, I use a lot of raw sienna. We'll just paint in this square. I thought about taping off areas. No, this rectangle. So I thought about taping off spots, but then I thought that, with the wet paper, I'm not sure if it would start buckling, and I didn't want to deal with that. I might play with that down the line. So we'll see how wet and wet looks, and we'll see what else takes place. So raw sienna, I did have the vermilion down on here. I have other colors coming in, and they are going to be versions of color combinations and palettes that I utilize. But once again, we want to see if we can achieve just a difference with the gouache, because I'm guessing that you can take something and be like, okay, let me see if I can do the exact same thing in a different medium. Or, and this is cerulean blue, you can experiment and have fun and see if you can get those differences with it. And if you want to try to gouache and see if you get the exact same thing as watercolor, that's totally fine. This is cerulean blue. Gouache does have a different smell to it, and by now, if you watch these videos, you know that I have nasal sinus issues. This is black mixed with ultramarine, making a Payne's gray. So for me to be able to smell it, that says something. It's not a bad smell, but I think it is this brand. They do have a different base. I think it's they say dextrin. Let me see if it says it on it. And that's not me saying that's good or bad. Like I genuinely don't know what the difference is, but it's just to let you know that there apparently is that brand of difference. I had bought those. They were the cheapest on Blick when I had gotten those, and then I recently ordered these, and I think I told you all about that, where there was a sale on the Da Vinci website. And I guess you could say I'm kind of a Da Vinci brand fanboy. However, I do have some Van Gogh brand, which I think is Royal Talons. Is it? Brand Royal Talons. Yep, Royal Talons. So I guess I'm a Royal Talons as well as Da Vinci fanboy. And then I am also, I have a few Cotman and Daniel Smith, but I don't have I don't use those ones too much. This is just mixing, playing, just to see what it comes out like. It's still wet and wet. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Here's burnt Sienna and ultramarine. And when I poured those on the palette, I had thought, man, I'm going to talk about how I want to deviate from watercolor and all that. And here I am, you know, the two most common colors on my palette, the burnt sienna and the ultramarine. But then, like I had said, I'm just trying to apply it differently. With that being said, let's grab some of this green. This is fir green. I have some sap green coming in the mail. The difference between the fir green and the sap green, I'm not too sure. Let's just feed it in. So we see it does disperse wet and wet, as if we were to do watercolor. These Chinese brushes are fun. I mean, I'm standing up and I'm holding it all the way out here and just pushing around. Though they are shedding quite a bit. I don't know if it's because they've been out of use for over a few years or what. Let's mix that with ultramarine. I'm kind of getting a purplish. This is a regular ultramarine, so I don't know why I'm getting that. Okay, so let's dry it off and then paint over it and see what it looks like on the next level. Alright, so I do have a color shift that takes place. Let's rinse this brush off. The cool thing about the Chinese brushes, if you get quality ones, they're good brushes. And a lot of times they have the hooks on the back, so you can get those command hooks and set them up in your art room and then hang them upside down to dry. And that prevents the water from going within the, I believe it's pronounced the ferrule, and that'll help them last longer. So let's try this one. I think this is called a bamboo brush or orchid brush. It's used for more finer point. So we'll just play around and see what type of things we could put in. Let's mix. This is just experimenting, black and the ochre. So you can see that the texture of the paper itself, the dry brush effect, is very prevalent. I'm not sure if it's also because of the brush. This would probably be good for on location sketching. Bring a few tubes with you of different colors, but I think that it does dry pretty quick on the palette out of the tube compared to the watercolor. I'm not sure. That's something experiment. There's a website, I don't know his complete name, but it's Gurney's Journey. You may have heard of it. He has a lot of information about gouache and watercolor, and he's just fantastic. He's like really good, very informative. I think he has videos and books. I think some of the stuff is like, you know, pay for it and things like that. Oh, speaking of which, this is just black. If you're ever interested in, you know, supporting the channel, there is a link down below for the Patreon account, and you can sign up for 2 different tiers. One of them is like a $2, the other one's like a $5, and this helps with art supplies and to keep this channel you know, just producing videos. And the $5 tier has some exclusive content for y'all. But if you don't want to support, or if you can't support, I understand. I'm not offended at all. I just you know, I'd appreciate if you guys give a like and subscribe and a follow. And I would also like you guys to leave questions and comments below, or suggestions. If there's other artists that I'm not mentioning, or if you want me to let you guys know of artists that I know of that you can look in their direction, or people that have videos in regards to these things, let me know, and I'll try to help you all out. I would also love if people and welcome kind of challenges. If somebody says, hey, would you mind trying to paint this landscape, and we can make a video out of it. So that's my spiel. But you know, of course, art supplies are expensive, so that's the main reason for me to do that. So I'm just playing with the opacity here, just kind of going back and forth, looking to see what can happen. I have that rust, the ochre on the palette. I'm trying to think of like how you use that as like a yellow. I'm just trying to build up this opacity. Now, let's try this off. Now, let's take this. We're going to do a dry off. Now the weird thing is, this reminded me a lot of the Chinese brush painting. It might be because I'm using the Chinese brush, but Also, those paints were opaque, but rather than black, when I had done that, I used the black ink. So that's a little weird that I'm not using that. I'm gonna put a tree in right here. See, the cool thing about these brushes, you know, it's long, but I can get calligraphy type strokes with them. And I probably have some brushes that are shorter and have a fine point as well. In fact, I was going through them earlier. Just like I said, I'm not trying to whine. I just don't remember which one was for which at times. This one is too thick, so let me put them over there. Let me see if I have more of a script type one. I know that I did, and it might be this guy. There's one that they refer to as like a mouse whisker or a rat whisker for the fine. That might be this. Alright, art supply is great. And we could get meticulous with it and be quite time consuming, but I'm just gonna kind of dot in these structures right here. And it's weird, when I did the Chinese brush painting, I utilized the rice paper, which really isn't made out of rice. I think it's just, you know, referred to as that. And that is really cool stuff. They have, and this is watercolor paper. They have raw, and I'm not sure what they call the other one, but the raw is unsized, I believe. Sizing is like just additive to the paper itself. I believe it might prevent a dispersion throughout, but regardless, the basic rice paper, you would go in and it would get a little bit dispersion. But if you did one brush stroke and then another stroke over it, you could actually see the layers form, and it looked really cool for the koi fish and stuff like that. The only bad thing was displaying it. I had to figure out a way to mount it. There's some stuff that I had read about wallpaper glue, and you take, and I would take a Bristol board, just that clear paper, but I wouldn't take wallpaper glue to attach the rice paper, which is translucent onto it. I would take the glue sheets that you would put underneath mounting paper. You'd take a photograph, you'd put the board underneath, you'd put that between it, and then you'd put the iron on top, and the iron would activate the mounting paper into a glue. That's what I would do with my Chinese paintings. I would mount them in that fashion. But like I said, you know, it's quite tedious. It takes time away from actually creating the art. The nice thing about watercolor is that you can, the American watercolor, you could put a mat over it and toss it in a frame. It's very easy to do. Let's see if we get a dry brush. Okay, so let's leave that one at that. Let's move over onto this other side. Let's now experiment with, let's see, what do we want to do? I'm grabbing the Western brushes. Let's maybe stay Chinese for the landscape. I do want to use a, find a very, very small square brush, flat, for the figure painting. I saw a video, about an hour and a half video, and I think the gentleman was using oils, and he was doing figure painting, and I just found him. So I subscribed to him, and he had tons and tons of portrait painting on there. I think it's all him painting it, and it's just insane. So I do not know his name, but once I do another video on portrait painting, after I watch one of his, I'll mention him and I'll give you guys the name and the link so y'all can check him out. That's a terrible way to do to try to get followers in business. Like, hey, come check out this channel. I'm going to send you somewhere else. But I really think, you know, it's important to give credit where credit's due, and I don't want to hide anything from y'all. I'm just playing with the ochre right here to see what can happen. Just letting a thing form. And this one I'm just using the Orchid brush for the bamboo. Mixing the Ultramarine and the burnt Sienna. I'm getting a purple out of this, kind of like the light red mixed with the Ultramarine. It's very interesting how the wet and wet dispersion is very similar to our watercolor. But keep in mind, I wet this with a tone as opposed to pre-wetting the paper and then starting to charge color into it. So I did that. I think one thing I noticed that there is a little bit of a drying shift, but I don't think it's as much as what we see with watercolor. Let's grab the red burnt umber, sorry, the burnt sienna. Mix that with our fir green. We'll create a big old tree right here. Let me see if I'm within the film. Yes, I am. Very cool. It's weird having black. Notice how I really haven't used white. That's going to be something that is going to take getting used to. I try not to use that. Well, I have white in the palette for oil painting, and when I utilize it, I do it in the fashion that I see from Stuart Davies, an oil painter that films on YouTube, and he will put the white in the sky and then use a soft brush and soften it. I always wondered about that with gouache with white, if it's possible to put it in and get that softness. So I'm just building up this opacity and darkness, tonality as well. I do like framing it. What I mean by that is just crossing around. We'll do a dry off. Okay, so we did get a drying shift there. This is a mixture of black, burnt sienna, and green. We do have a lot of water on here. Let's see, dry brush. Just let the dry brush create. Let's switch over to this little guy. Of course, you don't need to have these brushes if you're using gouache or even watercolor and just following along and playing around. Just just think of this as being the rigger and the other one as being the hake. Actually, let's take a little bit of white. I don't want too much water, I just want the white. Let's see how that goes in if we do a sailboat. Grab a little bit of that dark. You see how fine of a line we can get. Let's put a little bit of white down. So, I have a fan brush here, which is weird. I think I bought the fan brush to try with the oils, and that has not migrated over that yet. I'm not sure if this one would work for it, but let's just put that in as a, just to see what happens. You have to mix it with the burnt sienna to tone it down. Just so green. This is the Royal Talons fir green. It's just a different way of getting a fast and loose effect. Black from the tube, just to that in there. I'm thinking about trying black with regular watercolors, like the black gouache. We got to see how that dries. It's all about experimenting. I think that's where people get turned off sometimes with art, is that they're not sure what to try and what to experiment with, or they might think you don't have enough time to experiment, or they want things to come out perfect the first time. You just realize that it's gonna, unfortunately, it might take a while. There are a lot of shortcuts. There really are. They're to make things look real, or at least nice very quickly and to get effects and all that. And there's nothing wrong with taking shortcuts. They're really not. It isn't. You know, if you could get something done in 10 minutes, that maybe with another technique might take, I don't know, an hour, then go for it if you want to do that path. But it really does boil down to actually putting a brush to paper. You have to do it. So let's try this off. Let's see how the black dries. Okay, so the black dries dark. It looks good compared to blacks that I've tried for watercolor. So that black gouache will probably migrate and make its way into the other palette, the watercolor itself. I don't have any mattes for us to try over this, but I guess you can see the difference. And I did use different brushes than I usually do. That cerulean blue came out really beautiful. So we'll have to play around with different colors, and just experiment with it. No finished products, anything like that anytime soon. Just playing around, see what we like. I am going to get in the habit of cleaning this palette off, or at least cleaning between the colors. And we'll have to keep an eye on the chalkiness and how things reconstitute. So there's a few differences, I think, for me personally, in regards to, I guess, palette hygiene, we'll call it. But it's not too much of a hassle. That's what drew me to Western watercolors over oils at times, is that it's just very easy to get started. Anywho, that's that. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any question, comments, feedback, please comment down below, and I will talk to you all soon. Have a great day. Bye.